Schumpeter. The battle for low Earth orbit.
The battle for low Earth orbit.
Elon, Massa, and Boris. What could possibly go wrong?
Elon, Massa, and Boris. What could possibly go wrong?
Schumpeter is only an amateur stargazer. His equipment is no fancy. Schumpeter is only an amateur stargazer.
Schumpeter is only an amateur stargazer.
His equipment is no fancier than a pair of eyes and a place in the countryside away from London's light pollution.
His equipment is no fancier than a pair of eyes and a place in the countryside away from London's light pollution.
That is enough to make out Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and occasionally the International Space Station crossing the firmament.
That is enough to make out Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and occasionally the International Space Station crossing the firmament.
In the past few years, a new spectacle has appeared in the form of the Starlink satellites.
In the past few years, a new spectacle has appeared in the form of Starlink satellites.
Yes, a new spectacle has appeared in the form of the Starlink satellites.
In the form of the Starlink satellites.
Yes, a new spectacle has appeared in the form of the Starlink satellites.
In the form of the Starlink satellites.
Launched in batch.
In the past few years, a new spectacle has appeared in the form of the Starlink satellites.
Batches by SpaceX in the form of the Starlink satellites. Launched in batches by SpaceX, an American rocketry firm.
Launched in batches by SpaceX, an American rocketry firm.
Founded by Elon Musk, the tech billionaire behind Tesla's electric cars.
Founded by Elon Musk, the tech billionaire behind Tesla's electric cars.
They resemble nothing else in the heavens.
They resemble nothing else in the heavens.
Floating like a train of white dots in tight formation.
Floating in the
heavens. Floating like a train of white dots in tight formation.
Floating like a train of white dots in tight formation. Launched in batches. Launched in batches by SpaceX, an American rocketry firm founded by Elon Musk, the tech billionaire behind Tesla's electric cars. They resemble nothing else in the heavens, floating like a train of white dots in tight formation.
Bad weather delayed the launch of the latest batch on July 8th.
Bad weather delayed the latest launch on July 8th.
When they do go up, they will total nearly 600.
When they do go up, they will
On July 8th. When they do go up, they will total nearly 600.
When they do go up, they will total nearly 600.
Making SpaceX the world's biggest satellite operator.
Making SpaceX the world's biggest satellite operator. When they do go up, they'll total nearly 600. They will total nearly 600. Making SpaceX the world's biggest space satellite operator.
SpaceX is a remarkable firm.
SpaceX is a remarkable firm.
It was founded in 2002 to further Mr. Musk's dream of colonizing Mars.
It was founded in 2002 to further colonizing Mr. Musk's dream of colonizing Mars.
It is a case study in disruption.
It is a case study in disruption.
A startup with no track record has humbled incumbents like Boeing and Lockheed Martin.
An incumbent with no track record has humbled incumbents like Boeing and Lockheed Martin. It is a case study in disruption. A startup with no track record has humbled incumbents like Boeing and Lockheed Martin.
Its rockets cost half as much as its rivals do.
Its rockets cost half as much as its rivals do.
Thanks in part to their ability to land their first stages for reuse rather than
Thanks to the ability to land their first stages for reuse,
dumping them in the sea, to land their first stages for reuse rather than dumping them in the sea in line with standard industry practice.
rather than dumping them in the
Rather than dumping them in the sea in line with standard industry practice.
rather than dumping them in the sea in line with standard industry practice. Its rockets cost half as much as its rivals do, thanks in part to their ability to land their first stages for reuse rather than dumping them in the sea in line with standard industry practice.
The firm was last valued at $36 billion with standard industry practice. The firm was last valued at $36 billion, more than better-known tech darlings such as Airbnb, DoorDash, or Palantir.
The firm was last valued at $36 billion, more than better-known tech darlings such as Airbnb, DoorDash, or Palantir.
SpaceX's rocket business alone does not justify this rich value. SpaceX's rocket business alone does not justify this rich valuation.
SpaceX's rocket business alone does not justify this rich valuation.
The market for launches is small and stagnant.
The market for launches is small and stagnant.
Mr. Musk himself has said that the most his firm could hope to earn from them
Mr. Musk himself has said the most his firm could hope to earn from them
is around $3 billion in revenue a year.
is around $3 billion in revenue a year. Mr. Musk himself has said the most his firm could hope to earn from them is around $3 billion a year, $3 billion in revenue a year.
If he is to make it to Mars, and if his investors are to see big returns,
If he is to make it to Mars, and if his investors are to see big returns,
he needs another plan.
he needs another plan. If he is to make it to Mars, and if his investors are to see big returns, he needs another plan.
This is where Starlink comes in.
This is where Starlink comes in.
Those satellites visible from Schumpeter's garden are the vanguard of a planned constellation of over 1,000. Satellites visible from Schumpeter's garden are the vanguard of a planned constellation of over 1,000.
Those satellites visible from Schumpeter's garden are the vanguard of a planned constellation of over 1,000.
Designed to beam the internet to every corner of the globe.
Designed to beam the internet to every corner of the globe. Those satellites visible from Schumpeter's garden are the vanguard of a planned constellation of over 1,000, designed to beam the internet to every corner of the globe.
Satellite broadband is not a new idea.
Satellite broadband is not a new idea.
But existing options are expensive and slow. Starlink's cheap, mass-produced, low-flying satellites would.
Starlink's
cheap, mass-produced, low-flying satellites would.
Starlink's cheap, mass-produced, low-flying satellites would.
SpaceX claims offer a service comparable to earthly broadband.
SpaceX claims offer a service comparable to earthly broadband at competitive prices.
It could serve poorly connected villages in rural Africa.
It could serve poorly connected villages in rural Africa.
Or rural America for that matter.
Or rural America for that matter.
As well as oil rigs or cargo ships at sea.
As well as oil rigs or cargo ships at sea.
For that matter, as well as oil rigs or cargo ships at sea.
As well as oil rigs or cargo ships at sea.
Mr. Musk has noted that the global telecom or cargo ships at sea. Mr. Musk has noted that the global or cargo ships at sea. Mr. Musk has noted that the global telecoms market is worth roughly Mr. Musk has noted that the global telecoms market is worth roughly $1 trillion.
Mr. Musk has noted that the world's telecoms market is worth roughly around $1 trillion.
That the global rigs or cargo ships at sea. Mr. Musk has noted that the global telecoms market is worth roughly $1 trillion.
Mr. Musk has noted that the global telecoms market is worth roughly $1 trillion.
If SpaceX captured even a fraction of that,
If SpaceX even captured a fraction of that,
Morgan Stanley, a bank, recently opined it could be worth anywhere from $50 billion to $120 billion or more.
Morgan Stanley, a bank, recently opined that it could worth anywhere between $50 billion to $120 billion or more.
Anywhere from that, Morgan Stanley, a bank, recently opined it could be worth anywhere from $50 billion to $120 billion or more, making its present value $50 billion to 100. Bank recently opined it could be worth anywhere from $50 billion to $120 billion or more.
It could be Morgan Stanley, a bank, recently opined it could be worth anywhere from $50 billion to $120 billion or more,
making its present valuation look like a bargain.
making its present valuation look like a bargain.
The world has been here before.
The world has been here before.
Iridium announced similar plans in the late 1990s.
Iridium announced similar plans in the late 1990s
with gales of hype.
with gales of hype.
The first call on its network was between Al Gore, then America's vice president.
The first call on this network was between Al Gore, then America's vice president,
and a distant descendant of Alexander Graham Bell.
and a distant descendant of Alexander Graham Bell.
9 months later, the firm went bust.
9 months later, the firm went bust.
Swamped by the upfront capital costs of launching the firm went bust. Swamped by the upfront capital costs of launching satellites.
Swamped by the upfront capital costs of launching satellites.
Leosat, a firm based in Luxembourg, was founded in 2013.
Leosat, a firm based in Luxembourg, was founded in 2013.
It shut down last year for lack of investor interest.
It shut down last year for lack of investor interest.
Starlink's chief competitor is OneWeb.
Starlink's chief competitor is OneWeb,
with 74 satellites in orbit and hundreds more planned.
with 74 satellites in orbit and hundreds planned.
Web, with 74 satellites in orbit and hundreds more planned.
Hundreds more planned.
It too went bust in March after failing to
persuade
even Son Masayoshi, also known as Masa, a Japanese tech billionaire.
After failing to persuade Shon Masayoshi, also known as Masa, a Japanese tech billionaire,
with a stake, Masayoshi, also known as Masa, a Japanese tech billionaire with a stake and a well-documented affection for risky startups, to pony up more cash.
With a stake and a well-documented affection for risky startups, to phony up more cash.
But it has new backers. On July 3rd, Boris Johnson, Britain's shaggy dog Prime Minister.
On July 3rd, Boris Johnson, Britain's shaggy dog Prime Minister,
Boris Johnson, Britain's shaggy dog Prime Minister, announced that his government had stumped up 500 shaggy dog Prime Minister announced that his government had stumped up $500 million.
Announced that his government has stumped up $500 billion.
Announced that his government had stumped up $500
million
for a 45% stake in OneWeb,
for a 45% share in OneWeb,
and a golden share $1 billion for a 45% stake in OneWeb,
for a 45% stake in OneWeb,
and a golden share giving it control over its future.
and a golden share giving it control over its future.
Bharti Global, an Indian telecoms firm, also put in $500 million.
Bharti Global, an American telecoms firm, also put in $500 million.
Global, an Indian telecoms firm, also put in $500 million. Mr. Johnson's decision drew general bafflement.
Mr. Johnson's decision.
Mr. Johnson's decision drew general bafflement
Mr. Johnson's decision drew general bafflement
and an instant flurry of speculation about its rationale.
and an instant flurry of speculation about its rationale.
Could he be trying to safeguard a domestic high-tech gem about its rationale? Could he be trying to safeguard a domestic high-tech gem?
Could he be trying to safeguard a domestic high-tech gem?
Britain has long tried to nurture its small but sophisticated space sector.
Britain has long tried to nurture its small but sophisticated space sector,
OneWeb is notionally a British firm.
and OneWeb is a notionally British firm.
Its parent company is based in Jersey, an island in the English Channel.
Its parent company is based in Jersey, and an island in the English Channel.
Its parent company is based in Jersey, an island in the English Channel. But many of its operations, including satellite manufacturing, are in America.
But many of its operations, including satellite manufacturing, are in America.
Perhaps the reasons were strategic.
Perhaps the reasons were strategic.
China was circling, claims one person close to the reasons were strategic. China was circling, claims one person close to the deal, and Britain pounced to frustrate its ambitions.
China was circling, claims one person close to the deal, and Britain pounced to frustrate its ambitions.
Except that the American court administering the bankruptcy
Except that American court administering the bankruptcy.
ambitions. Except that the American court administering the bankruptcy
Except that the American court administering the bankruptcy
may be reluctant to hand OneWeb over to a Chinese firm.
may be reluctant to hand over OneWeb to a Chinese firm.
The bankruptcy may be reluctant to hand OneWeb over to a Chinese firm.
May be reluctant to hand over OneWeb over to a Chinese firm.
Bankruptcy may be reluctant to hand OneWeb over to a Chinese firm. Politics almost certainly played a part.
Politics almost certainly played a part.
Britain's exit from the European Union has limited its access to Galileo.
Britain's access from the European Union has limited its access to Galileo.
Britain's exit from the European Union has limited its access to Galileo, the EU's alternative to America's GPS satellites.
The EU's alternative to America's GPS satellite.
Galileo, the EU's alternative to America's GPS satellites. A bombastic promise to build an all-British replacement at a cost of £5 billion, that's 6.3 billion all-British replacement GPS satellite. A bombastic promise to build an all-British replacement.
A bombastic promise to build an all-British replacement.
At a cost of £5 billion, that's $6.3 billion or more.
At a cost of £5 billion, that's $6.3 billion or more.
Looks dubious. £5 billion, that's $6.3 billion or more. Looks dubious.
Looks dubious.
Bolting a less capable navigation service dollars or more. Looks dubious. Bolting a less capable navigation service onto OneWeb satellites.
Bolting a less capable.
Bolting a less capable navigation service onto OneWeb satellites.
Bolting a less capable navigation service to onto OneWeb satellites.
Bolting a less capable navigation service onto OneWeb satellites may offer Mr. Johnson a face-saving way to back down. While pushing back against the perception that Brexit has made the country parochial.
Pushing against the perception that Brexit has made the country parochial.
Pushing back against the perception that Brexit has made the country.
Yet there are also hopes, according to insiders,
that the bizarre acquisition may work on purely commercial grounds.
That the bizarre acquisition may work purely on commercial grounds.
That the bizarre acquisition may work on purely commercial grounds.
That the bizarre acquisition may work on purely commercial grounds.
OneWeb has priority over SpaceX.
OneWeb has priority over SpaceX.
For the bits of the electromagnetic grounds. OneWeb has priority over SpaceX for the bits of the electromagnetic spectrum.
For the bits of the electromagnetic spectrum
needed to beam the internet from the heavens. Those satellite companies that survived bankruptcy, such as Iridium.
Those satellite
companies that survived bankruptcy, such as Iridium.
Those satellite companies that survived bankruptcy, such as Iridium.
Those satellite companies that survived bankruptcy, such as Iridium, have come out on the other side as viable.
If somewhat dull businesses.
Like railways in the 19th century and subsequent infrastructure projects.
Like
railways in the 19th century and subsequent infrastructure projects. Globe-spanning satellite broadband may become a viable proposition once globe-spanning satellite 19th century and subsequent infrastructure projects. Globe-spanning satellite broadband may become a viable proposition.
Globe-spanning satellite broadband may become a viable proposition.
Once the initial investors, who often overpay exuberantly, have been positioned. Once the initial investors, who often overpay exuberantly, Once the initial investors, who often overpay exuberantly,
Once the initial investors, who often overpay exuberantly, have been wiped out.
And Mr. Musk could use a rival in low Earth being wiped out. And Mr. Musk could use a rival in low Earth orbit.
And Mr. Musk could use a rival in a low Earth orbit.
Jeff Bezos, the biggest tech tycoon of all.
Jeff Bezos, the biggest tech tycoon of all,
is working on a similar project.
Is working on a similar project.
Has yet to put any satellite tycoon of all is working on a similar project, but has yet to put any satellites into space.
But has yet to put any satellites into space.
In the meantime, competition from OneWeb would spur innovation.
In the meantime, competition from OneWeb would spur innovation.
In the meantime, competition from OneWeb would spur innovation and prevent SpaceX from settling into a celestial monopoly.
And prevent SpaceX from settling into a celestial monopoly.
Can the British government be a source of competitive pressure?
Can the British government be a source of competitive pressure?
Can the British government be a source of competitive pressure? The politest description of its entrepreneurial record is spotty.
The politest description of its entrepreneurial record is spotty.
Its entrepreneurial record is spotty. Just ask owners of clunkers such as an Austin Allegro or Morris Marina.
Just ask
owners of clunkers.
Just ask owners of clunkers
Austin Allegro or Morris Marina.
such as
Produced, just ask owners of clunkers such as an
Austin Allegro or Morris Marina.
Produced after the partial nationalization in 1968
Produced after the partial nationalization in 1968
of British Leyland.
of British Leyland.
OneWeb may need a further injection of cash if
OneWeb may need a further injection of cash
it is to complete its OneWeb may need a further injection of cash if it is to complete its constellation.
if it is to complete its constellation.
British taxpayers may never see a financial return
British taxpayers may never see a financial return
on their investment.
on their investment.
But if OneWeb keeps Mr. Musk on his toes even for a little while,
But if OneWeb
keeps Mr. Musk on his toes even for a little while,
OneWeb keeps Mr. Musk on his toes even for a little while,
their loss may turn out to be global consumers' gain.
their loss may turn out to be global consumers' gain.
For a little while, their loss may turn out to be global consumers' gain. Stranger things have happened in space.
Stranger things have happened in space.